All right, so I'm going to run through this chapter 5, lesson 3 with you kind of quickly so I don't take up too much of your time. So today we are using the distributive property to multiply two-digit numbers. So our essential question for this chapter is how can I multiply by a two-digit number? We've learned a few strategies so far. We have multiplied by our multiples of tens, hundreds, and thousands, and so on. We have rounded to estimate products, and just remember if I have two multi-digit numbers that I'm multiplying by one another, then I've got to round both of those factors whenever I'm estimating. And today we are looking at area models, arrays, partial products, all of those within the distributive property. So remember your three steps for the distributive property are decompose, multiply, and add. And that does not change with multiplying by two-digit numbers. So let's take a look. It says you have used the distributive property to find a product of a two-digit number and a one-digit number. Now, they've given us an example here where my initial problem is 3 times 11. Now, before, we would jump from 3 times 11 straight to this part right here. We wouldn't put that in there. So that's kind of an extra step that they've added, but it's okay. What they're saying is I've taken 3 times 11, and I'm going to decompose, multiply, add. All right, which number do we decompose? We decompose the number 11. What they've done here is they have said, okay, I'm keeping my 3 the same. I'm going to multiply it. But I'm about to decompose, or I did decompose the 11. So all they're doing is they've put in an extra step with this distributive property and said, hey, I'm keeping 3 times the same, but I'm decomposing my 11, my big number. So after I decompose, then I'm going to multiply, which is what you see here. I've got to multiply, so I've decomposed on my area model over here. I've decomposed on my distributive property here. After I decompose, I need to multiply 3 times 10. Oops, it's not staying. 3 times 10 equals to 30. And then I'm going to multiply 3 times 1 equals to 3. So let me write those in the blanks. Give me a red pen. 3 times 10 was 30. 3 times 1 was 3. So I decomposed here. Then I multiplied to get each of those. And now I add. And so 3 times 11 is 33. Now, we know what the answer to 3 times 11 is. Remember, that's not the point. We're using this easy problem to understand how to use this distributive property. Actually, this is a review. So let's come over here and plug in what we did with our area model to what we need to do with our distributive property. So 3 times 10, whoops, it didn't get my pen. 3 times 10 is 30. 3 times 1 is 3. Sorry, I didn't get my 0. And 30 plus 3 is 33. So that's a review of what we've learned last chapter. It says we can also use the distributive property to find the product of a two-digit number and a two-digit number. So, of course, we can still use it for this chapter. So let's take a look at this example. So on this example, we're going to find 12 times 15. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to label this area model. Now they have broken this down a lot. They didn't use the same area model. We have step 1, then we come over here to step 2, then step 3. So we're going to decompose one of these numbers. Now you can decompose both of them, but for this lesson, we're just going to decompose one of them. Now I want to kind of look ahead at my example and see, did they tell me which number to decompose? Yes, they did. They decomposed the what? The 15. Now, it's easy to say, oh, well, they decompose the big number. Sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes we have to look ahead and see which number they decomposed, or sometimes we get to pick either one. But what we're going to do is for this one, we're going to keep 12 the same because it's easy to multiply by 12. And my 15 is what I'm going to decompose. So let's move over here to my number 2. So decompose the 15. Separate the tens and ones of that one factor. Then label each part. So we decompose 15, we keep 12 the same. We decompose 15 into its tens and ones. I get 10, and 5. Now remember, this is the extra step. And I feel like this extra step is here because we need to know which number we pick to decompose. So what we've done is we've said, hey, on 12 times 15 with my distributive property, I'm leaving this alone, but I'm going to decompose my 15. And of course, the reason why it's in parentheses is because I can put that back together to make my 15 and then multiply. So let's go back to our steps that we know from the chapter before. Decompose. All right, so if I'm decomposing, that means my 12 goes on the side. What I keep together goes on the side. And then whenever I decompose, that goes up top. Same as last chapter, 10 and 5. So I decomposed. Now, what we would do, and this is what we're going to do today, is we would just use the same area model to do the next step, which I guess I will put it on the same line, but you remember it doesn't matter. So I'm going to multiply. Decompose, multiply, then add. First, I'm going to multiply 12 times 10. Remember, this is a basic fact, but you can do it in your 2 steps. 12 times 1 is 12. Then add a 0 on the end. I get 120. Or put a 0 on the end. Then 12 times 5 is 60. So I decomposed, multiply, add. I get 180 as my answer. Now, again, they broke this down into 3 whole parts. So let's look at theirs right here. This is what we just did. So we had 12 times 15. They said, hey, I'm about to decompose 15 into 10 plus 5. So there that is. So now I show where I'm about to multiply and what I decomposed. Then I show what I actually multiplied. I multiplied 12 times 10 first, right over here. That was 120, and I'll put it right here. Handwriting's terrible on here. I apologize. I multiplied 12 times 5, which was 60. 12 times 5 was 60. And then I added the 2. 120 plus 60 is 180. So 12 times 15 is 180. So not much difference in what we did last chapter. It's just this chapter, if you're dealing with bigger numbers, you might have to stack and multiply. So let's try a few of these together. Processes and practices, identify structure. How would you use the distributive property to find 12 times 18? Then find the product. Well, let's come out to the side and let's draw my area model. Now, anytime they have an 11, 12, 10 out there, I'm probably going to keep it the same since I know those multiplication facts. So I'm going to keep 12 the same, but I'm going to decompose 18. All right, I decomposed. So let me show you what that would look like over here with your distributive property. Now I'm going to write on the side because my handwriting is probably going to be too big. So I rewrite the problem like always. Now here's my extra step. I've got to show that I'm keeping the 12 the same and I'm going to multiply it by what I decomposed. 10 plus 8. All right, now I'm going to go back to last chapter where I say 12 times 10 decompose, multiply. 12 times 8 is 96. And then whenever I add these two together, 120 plus 96. We'll stack and add. Whoops, I can't write off the board. So it's 216. Now, let me go back over here and finish my distributive property. Now, ideally, I would be able to go across the page and maybe I'll do a better job with the next one. But what we would do is we would carry on right here. Let me see if I can squeeze it in. With, okay, I first multiplied 12 times 10. Then I multiplied 12 times 8. And then I added them together. 12 times 10 was 120. 12 times 8 was 96. And whenever I added these together, I got 216. All right. So let's do another one. I'm going to try and make my area model a little bit smaller on this one. How would you use the distributive property to find 14 times 17? Now, this one doesn't use a 12, but we can use either one of these to decompose that we want to. So, since we have been decomposing the first number, let's decompose, or the first factor, let's decompose the second factor just so we can see it's still going to give us the same answer. So let's keep 17 the same, and let's decompose 14 into 10 and 4. All right, so decompose, done, multiply. Now, here's the only difference. I don't know my multiples of 17. I don't know my multiples of 14. So it really didn't matter which one I picked. So I need to stack and multiply this. 17 times 4. Sorry, it's not picking up my handwriting too good down there at the bottom. I'll do it right here, maybe. 17 times 4. 7 times 4 is 28. 4 times 1 is 4. Plus 2 is 6. So I get 68. And now I have to add those two. It's really trying not to go on my lines. 8, 13, and I get 238 as my answer. So now let's see how that would look with this distributive property. So I rewrite the problem, 14 times 17 equals, all right, now I gotta tell them, gotta tell them which one I kept the same. So this time I kept 17 together. I'm gonna multiply it by what I decomposed. I decomposed 14 into 10 plus 4. All right. Now I got to actually show my steps. So the first thing I multiplied was 17 times 10. The second thing I multiplied was 17 times 4. And then if you did your multiplication right, this part should be rather easy. Don't know why put that right there, because once you use the parentheses, they are done. 238. All right, so I hope you see how similar this is to last chapter. Now, I want to point out some things for you on classwork, because you do have to do all of this classwork independently. You can look back at what we did together in class. But be sure that you realize that you've got to draw an area model for each problem. Don't miss number 4 right there. So I got to have an area model. Now, 3 and 4 tell you which numbers to decompose. They tell you to decompose 24. They tell you to decompose 19. Now, on here, a lot of people get confused on these next 2. I would rather you take and kind of scribble that one out and do that. And then do the same here, because it's really confusing. It has been every single year that I've done this, because they drop it down, because I'm assuming the computer ran out of room. So that way it's still on the same line like we did last time. So you would multiply, and then add your first group here, second group here, first group here, second group here. All right, so let me grab my book real quick. I should have come over here with it. And let me tell you, normally you could pick anyone to decompose, but I want to tell you which one to decompose, so my grading is a little bit easier. On this one, I want you to change the color, keep 52 the same, and decompose 11. All right. On this next one, I want you to keep 46 the same and decompose 22. All right. Now, for homework tonight, you are going to complete these. Notice on here that you're going to complete front and back. Sorry, you got to do all of this for homework. If you need some extra practice, Miss Jackie can go over 1 and 2 with you. Notice 1 and 2 do tell you which numbers to decompose. Yes, you must draw your area models. Now, I didn't put the back of the homework on here, but listen very carefully, because I'm going to tell you what to decompose on homework. So let's go here. So on homework, for problem number 3, I want you to keep 18 the same, but decompose, sorry, it's supposed to be parentheses, 39. On number 4, and please do the same thing, decompose the same number on your area model over here that you decompose on your distributive property. So on number 4, we are going to keep 17 the same and decompose 48. Sorry, it's not picking up good. On number 5, you're going to keep 33 the same and decompose 64. And then on number 6, now this one gives you a problem, but you still have to draw an area model or use a distributive property. You don't have to do both. But you're going to say 55 times 16. And you're going to decompose the 16. Whether you do distributive property or area model. Remember, do not decompose 2 separate numbers for an area model and distributive property. Like on number 3, if I decompose 39 over here, On my area model, I want to decompose 39. If I decompose 48 over here, I want to decompose 48 on my area model, unless you want to do twice the work, and nobody wants to do that. So here is your classwork for today. Miss Jackie is going to tell you all about this. I do expect you to get finished with this page today. You'll have time after lunch, about 20-ish minutes after lunch if needed, but you need to be working. You need to be working independently, being problem solvers. Remember, we're going to make mistakes. I just want you to try. I love you all, and I hope you all are making me proud.